Conversation, and today I'm going to show you how to paint our Dandelion Puff Just Breathe canvas. So hopefully you've already got your supplies and you have some white paint, some brown paint, black paint, a little bit of green, and a little bit of blue. So it doesn't take a lot of colors to do this canvas. Just some words about the paint. It is acrylic paint, so it's going to come off your hands and out of your hair, but if you get it on your clothes, you might be living with it. So just know that. And cleanup is just soap and water on your brushes. So I'm going to get started, and we'll just go through this canvas and follow along or watch the video and then do your painting. You should have instructions in your kits on how to do this. So anyway, here we go. So I'm going to start with my biggest brush. And a lot of white paint. I don't mix one particular color. We're going to actually do the whole background first, kind of this barnwood color. But I'm going to use a lot of white paint and a little bit of brown on my palette here. And then I'm going to let my brush mix those colors. And I'm going to use up and down strokes and just not blend it completely, so that some areas stay a little darker, some areas stay a little lighter. I usually start in this upper upper left-hand corner and work my way across. And as I do that, I want to do my edges. So I always kind of emphasize this, to do your edges. That way when it hangs on your wall, you have a nice clean edge. And so I'm just going to use up and down strokes. You notice how I'm not kind of doing the bottom down here, because what I'm going to do is, once I get all the way across here, and again, it's a lot of white paint, a little bit of brown, and I'm just leaving those brush strokes to create that board-like feel. And I've got my biggest brush, and I'm covering the canvas, but I'm not using big globs of paint, but I'm also not blending it so much that it's one particular color. So you'll notice how it goes pretty quickly. This big brush, just brown paint. Some areas are darker than others, are lighter. And again, I'm doing my edges as I come to them, making sure all my canvas is covered. And now that I've gotten all the way across the top part of my canvas, I'm actually going to flip it upside down. And so I've already done my top edge, so now my top edge becomes my bottom edge. And I'm going to do the same thing and make sure the rest of my canvas is covered here. So that's just a little trick. If you're laying it flat, then you don't have to do that. If you're working with an easel, whatever works for you. It just makes sure that you're doing those edges. It just gives it that finished feel. So if you get an area that's a little too dark, you can always come back with some just light white paint. Again, I'm leaving my brush strokes. I'm not blending it completely, so that I have that variation in colors. It looks like that weathered barnwood look. If you wanted a little more gray, you can add a teeny tiny bit of black to it. But I'm not going to do that just yet, because we're going to come back with some black to add in our boards and some darker areas. So right now it's just the brown and the white, and I probably used half of my white and maybe a third of my brown that I have there. Okay, so now that I have all of that covered, I've got all my strokes up and down. I'm going to put my big brush in my cup of water and just leave it there for the time being. We might come back to it here in a minute, but for right now, so that it's not drying out with paint in it, I'm just going to put that in my cup of water. I'm going to switch to my baby brush, my baby itty bitty brush, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of black paint. just straight black, and I'm even going to kind of brush it off on my palette here so that it's just a little bit of black paint. I don't want a great big glob of it. And I'm going to lay in these lines that create our boards. So I'm going to start, and right over here, and if you need to steady your hand, sometimes I use my pinky finger and steady my hand, but I'm just going to take a deep breath and just kind of draw a line. Doesn't have to be straight. Remember, these are weathered boards. And I'm going to keep those pretty even as I go across. I like to go bottom to top, and if my line breaks up, that's okay. I'll lay these boards in here. Like that. And then I'm going to add my sideboard, the tops where I'm going to come down maybe about a third, and every other one. Now, I like odd numbers, so if you have an odd number of boards, it kind of works a little better than even numbers of boards. Just visually, odd numbers work better. So I'm going to lay these in here like this. And then I'm going to use just a little bit of black paint. I got my baby brush, and I'm going to put in like these nail holes. And it's just a little bit of a circle, and we're even going to kind of do a little finger paint, just kind of smudge that in there. And so just a little dot of black paint, a smudge. Again, it'll wash off your hands, I promise. I'm going to put these in here, little smudges of nail holes, soften them up with your finger a little. You can make little circles. And then you can kind of clean your brush out. On your canvas, you can make some darker spots. And you can use the same kind of technique. You can use your finger and kind of smudge it a little bit. I found that when I did the demo painting, I actually went back and added a lot more black to this. You can use this baby brush and add some. Just have a little bit of paint on my brush. You don't want too big of spots. Kind of where the corners come in, you can darken that down quite a bit. So I'm going to spend some time and just add in some of these darker areas so that my boards look really roughed up and weathered. If your paint is still wet on the back of your canvas, that white, you're going to get a little bit of gray, and that's why I said not to, if you wanted a little bit of gray, you can add that in. You can get a little darkness around those nail holes. And I have very little paint on my brush, and I'm just basically cleaning my brush out on my canvas. And however you feel that this needs to be weathered, this is your barn wood, your fence, maybe it's up against a barn, maybe it's the bottom of a fence, you don't really know, right? Add some of this in here too. Put in some of these here. Kind of rough this up so it looks weathered. Okay, I'm going to come back with my medium brush. I just put my baby brush in my cup of water, and I'm going to leave it there until I'm ready for it again. I'm going to come back with my baby brush and maybe just my medium brush and just some straight brown. I'm going to really clean that off on the side of my palette so there's very little paint on there. And I'm going to add some darker areas too. You can use a little brown and a little black together to make a really dark brown. And again, I'm just adding some texture to these boards. Very little paint on my brush. You can call it a dry brush. Some areas that are a lot darker than others. Really scruffing that up. Now, mine's not going to be exactly like the original. There's no way to do it the same way twice. So if yours doesn't look like mine or your neighbor's, that's okay. Everybody's is going to be a little different. So I'm really kind of rough this up here. Now what I'm going to do is, because I have this medium-sized brush, I'm going to take some brown and black together, and I'm going to make a real dark brown. Doesn't take a lot of black, but just a real dark brown. And I'm going to come over and find basically about a hand's width in, a hand's width up. And I'm going to do a little dot here, circle. I'm just going to dab that in a circle. This is the center. And on this 11 by 14 canvas, it's probably going to be about the size of a quarter or so. So that's the center of my dandelion puff. And from there, I'm going to kind of just flip out. And you can see how my brush strokes are leaving this flipped out edge. And that is the center of my dandelion. I'm going to let that sit a minute. What I am going to do is I'm still going to use that real dark brown. And now I'm going to come around it. And I'm just going to use my brush to outline this. But we want to come out about maybe 2.5 inches. And so just kind of eyeball it here. You're going to do about 2.5 inches around your circle. And you'll notice I'm just kind of rough outlining this right now. I'm just kind of dabbing that in there. That one needs to be a little further out. So you have this rough outline. And from this rough outline, we're going to use that same technique where you're just going to kind of flip out and even inward a little bit of darkness, this dark brown. We got to do this dandelion in layers. And it's not very much paint. So I have very little paint. It almost becomes transparent, translucent through the bottom layer of the fence. Like you can see through it a little bit. So I'm just doing this dark layer around this circle. Just pick up more paint as you need it. Again, it doesn't take a whole lot of paint. And what I found when I did the original up here was that I actually had to come back and add some more darkness underneath. I didn't get it dark enough the first time. So it's okay if it is kind of dark. We want to make sure that we get that good shadow behind. Basically, you're putting in the shadow behind this puff so that your white will stand out. Bring this out a little bit here. Mine's not exactly straight. I'm doing it from the side, so bear with me on that. I'm going to do some darkness in between here too, so that it's a little darker down on this side. And then I'm even going to bring some down like this, so that it feels like it's got this shadow on our barn. You can clean your brush out a little bit more. And then I'm not even going to clean my brush. I'm going to pick up a little bit of this green, so it's a real dark green-brown. My palette here, green, brown, black, and I'm going to add in this stem that comes down here like this. So it's a little bit of green, a little bit of brown to give us this green-brown stem. So it's kind of at an angle. Like that. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to rinse this medium-sized brush. So I'm just going to rinse it in my water, kind of scrub it on the bottom of my cup. Once I do that, I'm going to dry it up on my paper towel. I don't want to have a sopping wet brush. If you still have a little brown or black in it, it'll be okay. Just get as much out as you can. Again, just gently scrub that on the bottom of your cup of water. Dry it up on your paper towel. And then I'm going to pick up just some white. And I'm going to start making our fluffs. So I'm going to, again, brush off a little bit on the side of your palette so that there's just a little bit of paint. And I'm going to go back over, and it's kind of that same technique, but we're going to start, you're going to kind of make like a flower shape. It's kind of an out to the sides, up to the middle, and then some fluff out, so that we have these dandelion puffs. So again, that's kind of out to the side, like almost a half starburst shape or a water lily shape. We're going to make these little puffs. And we're really going to fill these in as we go around it, because we're using just a little bit of paint here and there, not big globs of paint. It's going to dry fairly quickly, and that's what's going to give us this real light, because this right here is already dry. So that very little paint gives us that darkness. It's already dry, so we can go right over the top of it. If you used a lot of paint and you're having problems with it mixing, find a hair dryer and just dry it up a little bit. And I'm just going to flip these out and let my brush make those wisps as we go around. So I'm almost creating this kind of half flower shape. Very little paint. And I'm going to fill these in on a couple different layers. So one's kind of an outer layer, maybe one that's a little inner. And you'll get the hang of it where it's just, again, it's just a fluff. Almost like twinkling lights here. So we'll work our way around. Maybe do one out and then one in. The trick to these is to make sure that you're going out, so that all your starbursts are going out towards the outside, not so much towards the inside. Just kind of flipping them out, little feather action here. And then you can do another row on the inside. Same thing, so they overlap. Go ahead and do like a second row of fluffs around here. Kind of fill in on the inside. Work your way around. So you're going to do this second row of fluffs. Again, just kind of fills that in. And then you might even come around the outside and just kind of fill in some areas if you got some that needs to fill in. So you have all these fluffs. And then you're going to change to your baby brush. You're going to pick up just some white paint. I'm going to start from this inside. I'm going to add these stems that come out. And then I might even kind of fill in a little bit in the background here, real tiny little wisps of stems that just barely show up. And I'm going to add some dots in the middle here too. There's our stem. And then I'm going to start adding my flyaway little puffs. And so the thing with them is you want them to fly away. You don't want them to be falling. So they need to go out. But you want it to have like a tail. So your initial stroke is going to come towards your puff and just kind of flip down. And I always kind of think of these as like little dragonfly wings. It's like they're just kind of flying away. They look like little baby dragonflies. And so all my puffs, you want them to come from this direction, but you want the tail to go down. So you want to make sure that they're flying out. And these can be, like I said, I like to think of them as little dragonfly wings. I'm going to put a couple of these in, and they can go. Now, I've left this part, you'll see up here on this canvas, there's not a whole lot right here. So if you want to add a saying like just breathe or whatever, you can add that in that area there. Otherwise, you can add little puffs in there as you see fit. Add a little puff here to the side. Add another one that's kind of coming out this way. And you can even have one that's falling, but make sure that that's coming so that your tail's coming from there. It's falling. And then I'm going to use a little green and a little blue. It doesn't take very much at all. A little green, a little blue, and a little white. And that's what gives you this teal color. And it can be, the more white, the more kind of pastel it is. A little green, a little blue. And then I'm going to come back and add in some of these colors into my puff. Just really kind of pop that up. And again, it's just a little bit of color on my brush. A little bit of paint. Doesn't take a lot, because we just want to have that hint of color around there. Now, if you go a little too far and you're like, oh, I don't like that, you can come back with a little white over top of it. Kind of tame it down a little. You can add a little color here to these. Again, kind of watch which direction your brush strokes are going so they feel like they're flying away. Being carried away. Add these in. Just work your way around. Add them in where you need to. If you want more, if you want less, if you want bigger ones, you can go to your medium-sized brush, just rinse it out, dry it up on your paper towel. You can pick up a little bit of, my dog's wanting out of her kennel. come back with some of that color and add it to my barnwood too. So that's just kind of carries throughout the canvas, moves our eye around the canvas. And really that's it. That's our cute little Just Breathe canvas. I hope you've taken a minute to pause today and just breathe and enjoy your day, enjoy your painting experience, and thanks for joining us.